Let's take you across to the CBI in central London and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne.
To attend this dinner a week ago, I don't think you knew who was actually going to turn up, nor did I know who was going to turn up, but it's good to be here, and it's good to be here at actually a pretty historic occasion, an event where Liberal Democrat and Conservative cabinet ministers are sitting side by side in the first coalition that this country has seen since the Second World War. And it has been a remarkable 7 days in British politics. And I hope it will be a remarkable 5 years as we turn this country around. This is my first major speech in this job. And thank you very much for the early invitation. It's also, I'm sure, no coincidence that the first person I called after getting the job was Richard Lambert. And that is, I hope you will see, a reflection of the importance that I attach to Britain's business community and the importance I attach to the CBI as a representative of that business community. It's also great to have, as well as my cabinet colleagues, one particular member of the cabinet, the last Conservative Chancellor of the Exchequer, Ken Clarke. He is positively beaming in the role as Lord Chancellor of the country, and would be in a far smarter outfit giving this speech if he had been on this stage. But we're here to show our support and our commitment to the CBI and our support to business, and I want to begin this speech by thanking so many of the businesses represented here who normally, quite rightly, stay out of the political frame and are independent, quite rightly, of any political party, but who came together in their hundreds in a newspaper writing campaign during the election to make the case for enterprise. And with your help, we fought and won an argument about the best way to build a sustainable private sector recovery. Instead of more wasteful government spending, and more taxes on job creation of the kind that Helen warned us about, we said we would start immediately identifying savings so that we could stop the jobs tax. And that is exactly what we have done. And I can confirm that we will deliver on our promise to stop most of the increase in the employer national insurance contribution in the coming budget in order to save jobs and support the recovery. And the result of that will mean that employing someone will be less expensive than it would have been, regardless of income. It will encourage employers to create jobs and help protect existing jobs, especially for those on low and middle incomes. And this argument that government needs to do everything it can to support a private sector recovery will be my guiding principle as Chancellor. Because I believe that when you succeed, Britain succeeds. Now, back in the late 1990s, this seemed a rather obvious argument to make. And all politicians, left and right, paid lip service to the call for enterprise. But the events of the intervening years have shown that we can never assume that that argument is won. Today, public spending has risen to almost 50% of our economy. Over 5 million people are out of work and on out-of-work benefits. Record numbers are economically inactive. And even now, there are still those who argue seriously that yet more increases in public spending are the answers to our problems. No wonder too many people around the world thought that Britain had put up a sign that said closed for business. And today we take that sign down. We need to start making the case for enterprise all over again. This is something every generation needs to do in its own way. Let me tell you about my generation. We were shaped by the collapse of communism and the fall of the Berlin Wall. And this new government is comprised of people whose views were forged by that experience. For Conservatives, we felt it was a vindication of our economic arguments. But perhaps we were too slow to understand that the free market and smaller government need to go hand in hand with a bigger society. And we understand that now. And it brought to the fore as well a new breed of Liberal Democrats, such as my excellent Chief Secretary David Laws, who understood that a fair society needs free markets to sustain it. And just as we Conservatives have looked to the future and reached back to our one nation tradition, so my Liberal Democrat colleagues have looked to the future by reaching back to the inspiration of Gladstonian liberalism. So together, we will use the opportunity provided by this new coalition government to send the signal that Britain once again is open for business. And I want people around the country and all over the world to know that if you want to come here, invest here, create jobs here, then we will be on your side. We will back enterprise, not just as an end in itself, but as the way to build a stronger and fairer society. And I believe that is what this coalition is all about. And on the subject of coalitions, let me be absolutely frank. As a member of the Conservative negotiating team, we did consider, of course, whether we could try and bluff our way into being a minority government. But it was David Cameron's vision and Nick Clegg's foresight which saw, before anyone else, that that option would be the greatest compromise of all. A weak, unstable government, risking defeat night after night in Parliament, struggling to take the tough decisions that have been put off for too long. How much better to try to form a stable government with a majority of around 80 able to govern in the national interest. And at the heart of the agreement that we reached in that room in the Cabinet Office is a firm commitment to tackle Britain's debts and create the space for a private sector recovery. The very first item on the very first page of the agreement we signed says deficit reduction and continuing to ensure economic recovery is the most urgent issue facing Britain. Of course, the question I get asked already all the time is, where is the growth going to come from? I was asked that question in my very first press conference as Chancellor. Certainly, we can no longer rely on an ever-increasing public expenditure or debt-fueled consumption to drive growth. Over the past decade, over half of all jobs created were associated in some way with public spending. Over the past decade, business investment grew at around 1% each year, only a quarter of what it was in the 1990s. Of course, we were not the only country affected by the financial crisis. But our consumers became the most indebted, our banks became the most leveraged, and our government borrowed more as a proportion of its economy than any other country of a similar size. So Britain does need a whole new model of economic growth, where we save and invest for the future, where we seek to export instead of building our economy on debt. An economy where we sell our goods and services to China and the rest of Asia, instead of simply borrowing from them in order to buy the things that they make for us. But let's be clear. When you ask the Chancellor of the Exchequer the question, where is the growth going to come from? There is not some lever in my office that I pull that automatically gives you the answer. Because the real answer is that the growth will come from you, the businesses of Britain. So this evening, I want to explain briefly how this government will make the case for enterprise and how we will help you to succeed. And I want to explain how we will do that while building a fairer society and an economy that works for everyone.